everybody, and welcome to the Star Spangled Beauty Quilt Along. We're in the week of April 28th. We're going to be working on the Stars and Florals, America the Beautiful, Land That I Love, and Hearts 1 and 2. On camera today in detail, I'm going to show you the America the Beautiful block. This is an embroidery only block, and I'm going to show you Heart 2. You're going to want your instructions, your fabric for today's blocks. See the previous video if you're just getting started on how to cut your fabric. Fusible backing, light mesh cutaway, project batting. If you've got the orange pop rulers, they do make cutting a little bit easier, but I'll show you how to cut using a regular ruler. I keep mine all together in this little bag I made when I first started quilting. This is one of the first quilt blocks I ever made. I turned it into a tote bag and it holds my rulers. We're going to start with the America the Beautiful block. This is a quick embroidery only block. This is a great first block if you've never done a Kimberbell quilt. You'll notice you'll need your light mesh cutaway and your fusible backing. You're going to want fusible backing on the back of the background fabric for not only the America the Beautiful, but also the Stars and Floral and the Land That I Love. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that for this block, but I'm going to trim and get them all ironed down at the same time. Here's my fabric for the America the Beautiful block. You'll notice it only has that one piece of fabric inside. That's because there's no applique for this block. I've got my Kimberbell fusible backing. You can see that's already open. I am working on a few other projects. They also have these slat bands to help keep all your stabilizers nice once you've opened them. I'll link everything below for you. You want to go ahead and roll that out. You can see I've got a funny piece here. I'm using this for other projects. I need something that's going to fit this piece of fabric. I'm going to go ahead and line this up just like that, and I'm going to trim a piece the same size as my background fabric. If you've never used this product before, you can see that this is shiny. This is the side that's going to touch your fabric. That'll help it fuse to your fabric. I'm here at my ironing board. Before I press this, I want to have a good look and make sure there's nothing in between my fabric and the fusible backing. In particular, what I look for is black dog hair. We have 3 dogs, 2 of them are black. They all shed, so I want to make sure there's no black dog hair in here. Everything looks good. When you work with products like this, you don't want to do this with your iron. You press. I'm going to grab my iron. It's going to make a noise. Press, count to 10-ish, and then you're going to pick it up and move your iron, slightly overlap, and do the next section. I'm going to do that all the way down this direction, and then I'm going to flip it over and check it and make sure everything is pressed down. You can also press from the other side as well. If it's not pressed down, it will peel apart. Then you know you've missed something and you need to go back and press that section. I can see right here I've got a pressing line from the butt of the iron. I did not get any of this section, so I need to make sure I press that. I've flipped it over. It looks like everything is pressed down. I'm going to go ahead and just give it a quick press all the way down. I don't have to hold quite as long because I already did that on the other side, but I want to make sure that my fusible is down all the way. Why do you use fusible backing? A couple reasons. It is going to help stabilize your fabric, but when you're doing projects like this that have applique, different colors, fabric on fabric, adding the fusible layer also helps make your fabric look, I guess the best way to describe it is a little more solid from the front. It prevents that bleed through of color. Let's flip it and have a look. You can go to a corner. Looks good. Everything is pressed down. We're going to go ahead and start this block. We've got our fusible down. We're going to do the block by block quilting. We want to hoop our stabilizer only and pull our thread. Then I'll walk you through loading the background quilting and the embroidery design. When you're doing block by block quilting, make sure to look at the thread color, and here's why. This first block, the Stars and Florals, I did that early this morning. This was a big stitch out. I knew it would take a while, so I didn't want to film this one. I went ahead and did my Fusible on it. I had my light mesh cutaway. I hooped. I was getting ready to start, and the dogs needed to go out. I had to get up. I had to walk away. We were gone for a little while. I came back to my machine. I knew I was doing the background quilting, but I didn't look here. These are my colors for my background quilting. I went right over here. See this? I used this color, which is called sea green, for my background quilting instead of using, this is called Cloud and Magic Mint. It's a 2-color plaid in the background, and I accidentally did it all in one color and the wrong color. Let me show you how it turned out. And here it is. It looks fine. Unless you're making this quilt and you know this is supposed to be a 2-color quilting in the background, you'll never know. One thing I did do, since I knew that this color is a little bit darker than the 2 colors that were originally used, was look at where is this being placed in the quilt and how can I balance that out. On your instructions, you've got a picture of the entire quilt. This block is right up here. So I know that my quilting is going to pop just a bit more than intended because the color I picked was a little darker. So I started looking through the quilt and I saw this block, which is the one that I'm going to stitch with you right now, and I thought, well, that's perfect. I've got one up here and one here, and then down here there are some nice detail blocks. There's this lace block and the star blocks. It'll all balance out. So for my background quilting on my America the Beautiful block, I'm going to go ahead and match it to this block. When you're standing a little bit away from it, you're never going to know, and then that'll balance it throughout the quilt. I wanted to share that with you because I want everyone to know if you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. This looks wonderful. The design is beautiful. The embroidery is beautiful. Nobody will know unless they watch this video. This is a larger design, so for this design I won't be able to use the pre-cuts. You can see they won't be big enough. Anything you do with a 5x7 hoop, you can use these pre-cuts. It's very convenient. They're nice to have. I'm going to go ahead and grab my big roll of light mesh cutaway and roll out a piece big enough for this frame, and then I'll show you how to hoop your stabilizer since this is the first block in the series. You want to separate your hoop, lay down your stabilizer, make sure your piece is big enough to cover this outside hoop. We're going to place our inside hoop on top here. It's easier to do this with 2 hands. I'm holding the camera. Okay, I've set this inside. The first thing you want to do is hand tighten. I'll go ahead and do that. This is hand tightened as tight as I can get it. Now I want to pull my stabilizer and make sure that it's in there nice and flat. Once I've done that and it looks flat, it's looking good, I want to make sure that this is pushed down all the way. It was sticking up just a little bit. Make sure my hoops are together properly. I've pulled my stabilizer. Grab your screwdriver. If it's not this screwdriver, your machine probably came with a better screwdriver to use than this. This happens to be what I have. You want to tighten this down with the screwdriver. The reason you want to do that is because when the machine works, it vibrates and the hoop will move. If it's not tight, this inner hoop can pop out, and then you've either got to start over or work really hard to get back to where you were and try and figure out how to line up your design and keep going. It's tight. I'm going to go ahead and give one more pull, and I'm not pulling up, I'm pulling toward the center. If you pull up to tighten, you're going to pop your hoop right out. So pull opposite and in. This is nice and tight. Let's go ahead and load our design and start stitching. Today I'm working on a baby lock meridian. I have my machine on. My design files are on a USB. I'm going to hit embroidery, USB, my Star Spangled Beauty, And then we need to find our quilting file. In the instructions, you can see you're looking for the KDQ 407 stars 6x8. KDQ 407, and I'm looking for a 6x8. Here it is right here, 6x8. You want to select that file. I'm going to go ahead and hit set. And now I want to add my embroidery file right on top of this. I'm going to want the add button. And you'll see it sends me right back to where I started, which is fine. We go back to our USB, Star Spangled Beauty. And now I need my embroidery file, which is where my block designs are. And I'm looking for the America the Beautiful. It's right here. Go ahead and hit set. My designs are combined. There is a note in the instructions about centering and aligning. If your machine doesn't automatically do that, mine does. If you need to center and align it, go ahead and refer to your instructions. You've got both your files ready to go. I'm going to hit the embroidery key, and it tells me I'm ready. I've got a neutral thread color here. We're going to start with our batting placement line. And I'm going to talk about measuring your batting in just a moment. Let's stitch down this line. If you look ahead to the trimming instructions, it tells us we end up trimming to 8.5 by 6.5. If I cut my batting 9.5 by 7.5, that'll be just fine. I have my placement line covered. If you want, you can place some paper tape on here. If not, go ahead and get your hoop back on the machine, and we're going to do the batting tack down line. The batting is tacked down. You can see I've got extra. Could you have cut your batting a little bit smaller? Yes. However, we want to trim this off. So I need to hold it with one hand and get my scissors in there and trim with the other hand. If I only added a ½ inch instead of, let's say, a whole inch, I'm going to have very little to hold as I'm trying to sit here and trim that little bit off. And that's a little difficult for me. I'm going to grab my scissors, and now I've got enough here where I can hold this up and trim this extra batting off. And it's really not all that much. You do not have to get this exact. Remember, you're going to be putting this into a quilt, but you want to go ahead and trim off the excess. Everything is trimmed. We're ready to go back to our machine and do our fabric placement line. We're going to stitch the fabric placement line. See how your fabric placement line is outside of your trimmed batting? We're making a basically quilt as you go block. So as we're stitching this into our quilt, it helps to have that batting trimmed. If you forgot to trim your batting, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll all go together at the end. You're going to want to place your fabric right side up. Remember, you added the Fusible on the back, and make sure you cover that placement line. Double check, plenty of room. They gave us plenty of room with this piece of fabric with the measurements they gave in the instructions. Smooth it down. If you want, you can tape it. Otherwise, we're ready to go. Your fabric is tacked down. You're ready to start your background quilting. Remember to look at your instruction book and get the right color for your background quilting. We've already talked about that. Go ahead and switch your thread and then do your background quilting. What do you do when this happens in the middle of your design? Cut your thread. You need to take your project off your machine. Take out your almost empty bobbin, which if your machine is like mine, when it says it's almost out, it really is almost out. There's not that much left. I probably wouldn't have made it all the way to the end of that. We're going to go ahead and put in a new bobbin. Put your cover back on. Put your project back on your machine. Go ahead and close that. I'm going to back up my design. I'm going to go back by about 5 stitches. That'll be fine for this. If it runs out while I'm doing a heavy satin stitch like the words, I'll back up 10. Personal preference. We're ready to go. I'm going to put my foot down and keep going. The background quilting is done. We're on to the embroidery. Let's look at the instructions. Under the embroidery file instructions, It gives you the colors, it details which color to use for each step, and you also have diagrams to help you. Now this color happens to be the color I have for my background quilting. It's going to be the same, but if you did yours correct and used the correct color for the background quilting, you'll need to change your thread. So go ahead and do that, and you'll stitch out these 2 stars, then you'll have a thread change, these 2 stars, and then you'll have one more thread change for the letters. It also shows me on my machine, I've got a colored thread there. I'm going to stitch out 2 stars. The first 2 stars are stitched. We've got a thread change again. My machine lets me know visually I have a thread change. And then in your instructions, it tells you you have a thread change. Refer to your color key, make sure you've got the right thread, change your thread, stitch these 2 stars. I've got both my stars stitched. We're going to have one more thread change, and we're going to stitch out the words. That's the final part of this block. I'm going to show you a fun feature of this machine, and I bought this machine. I don't get anything for showing you this, but one of the things I like is this IQ Intuition. This works with an app and it monitors your machine. I have this feature on my multi-needle, so if you need to get up and walk away, you can see what your machine is doing. I'll show you that once I start stitching out the words. Actually, I'll show you this. It just went off telling me it's waiting for a thread change. I changed my thread. You can see this part's going to take a while to stitch out. That app will come in handy. I can take care of a few other things while it's running. Usually I stay in the same room, but in case one of the dog gets up and needs to go out or something, I can monitor it on the app. We are all stitched out for the America the Beautiful block. It looks great. Next up, we're going to do heart block number 2. If you pull your heart block bags, you might notice, something's missing. Where's the background fabric? In the embellishment kit, you'll find the dark denim and the light denim background fabrics for your heart blocks. If you're not using the embellishment kit, you just need to get some background fabric from your stash and pick your colors. Let's get started on these 2 blocks. This is the embellishment kit. I can see the 2 colors of denim right here. I'm going to take those out. Here's my pieces of denim. Also in this plastic, you'll feel a thick piece of plastic. That's your clear vinyl. Don't throw that away. You're going to need that. It says to cut these 6.5 inches square. They look pretty close to 6.5 inches. Here's a 6.5 inch ruler. I'm not even going to bother trimming these. These are good. They're ready to go. Let's load this design for heart number 2 together. We're going to look for KDQ 409 stars 4x4 vertical. Again, I'm on a USB. I need KDQ 409 4x4 stars vertical. Okay, I see 2. And do you see how it says 4x4 and then it says star, ... 4x4 star, ... I can't tell by that description which one's vertical, but they look different. Let's go in and have a look. This one has the top row, kind of the hearts leaning sort of this way. This one has them going up and down. You can see the difference. So visually I can see that the top 2 lean to the right, the bottom 2 lean to the left, and on this one it's by the columns. Let's go back and look at our instructions. I'm going to look at this picture. You could also pop open the file on your computer and take a look. Look at the top 2 hearts. This one goes that way, this one points down. These 2 here in this first column are leaning that way, and these 2 here are pointing down. I'm going to match that picture on my machine. That's going to be this one. I've got this column going this way and this column going down. I accidentally touched it, but that's the one I wanted anyway. I'm going to double check, refer back to my picture one more time. We're good there. I'm going to hit set, and now I want to add the heart, embroidery files, and the heart. I'm going to hit set. I've got both my files ready. I'm going to hit my embroidery, and then we'll start with our batting placement line. Refer to your block by block quilting. We're doing heart 2. We're going to do this all in one color. This is the darker blue. Change your thread. The background quilting is done. Let's go ahead and refer to our instructions for the embroidery section. Here we have heart number 1 and heart number 2. You'll notice going down the column, heart number 1 is all in the dark blue. Heart number 2 is in, I believe, the color raspberry. Look at the color guide to make sure. I've already pulled my thread. We need to change colors because we use this color for the background quilting, but now we're on to the embroidery and we've got to use the color that's indicated here. So make sure you change your thread. My thread color is changed. We're on to our fabric placement line. Let's go ahead and stitch that out. Here's our fabric placement line. This is much easier to see on camera. Heart number 1 stays with that dark blue, and it was on the dark denim. I couldn't even see it. Now we know where to put our fabric. You want to cover the placement line. Make sure it's on there really good. Double check. Need to bring it down just a little bit here. There we go. I'm going to check each side. It's kind of hard to do with one hand. And I'm going to double check the top. Well, I'm way over on the top, so I can bring it down just a little bit more on the bottom. It'll make it easier to trim. You can tape that if you want. I don't feel like I need to tape this. If you're ever doing anything where your embroidery machine's presser foot is going to go over for some reason, you absolutely have to tape it down to keep it from catching on the fabric. But this is nice and secure. I'm going to make sure it's flat, and I'm going to stitch my tack down line. Take your project off the machine, grab your duckbill scissors. This is a duckbill scissor if you've never seen these before. This rounded edge is going to help protect your stitches as you're cutting off the excess fabric. And then the snips are used in case you can't get close enough. I generally go all the way around with the duckbill, and if there's any extra fabric, I go back and use the snips. I'm going to go back with my snips and get anything like this where I just did not get close enough there and here, and get it a little bit closer to the stitch line, being really careful not to cut into my stitches. That looks better, good enough for me. I'm going to go ahead and lint roll it. If I wanted to, I could probably get a little bit closer here, but it's going to have a decorative outline stitch, so it'll look good. It does not have to be perfect. It will look good. We've got everything embroidered and ready to trim with our orange pop rulers. Let's go ahead and trim our blocks. I'm on page 11. I'll start with the stars and florals block. I am going to use the orange pop rulers, but I'll show you how to use a regular ruler as well. Under the trimming instructions, it tells you place a 4.5 by 6.5 orange pop ruler over the block, visually center in a square to 6.5 by 4.5. So here it says 4.5, 6.5. Here it says 6.5, 4.5. Same thing. I'm going to find that ruler. This is the smallest of the rectangles. It does say 4.5 by 6.5. We'll be using that ruler. You'll need a rotary cutter. If you haven't changed your blade recently, change your blade so you have a nice sharp blade. And if you have a rotating cutting mat, that will help as well. I've got out my rotating cutting mat. I am going to use the orange pop ruler, but I also want to show this with a regular ruler. This is the 4.5 by 6.5 orange pop ruler. That measurement refers to the inside on these rulers. You cut using these on the inside, not on the outside. To show it visually, this is a 4.5 inch square ruler. See how that fits right in here? There's your 4.5. This is a 6.5 inch square ruler, and it fits right there. That's the 6.5. So this is your 4.5 by 6.5. If you don't have one of these, you can use a regular ruler. keep in mind when they're referencing 4.5 by 6.5, they're talking about what you want to look at. Let me put the block down, it'll be easier to see. Here's your block. The 4.5 is going to be this way. The 6.5 is going to be this way. You also have that tack down line from earlier, which is going to help you center your block. Let's lay this down and use our regular ruler, and let's measure that tack down line. It's just under 4.5 and it's just under 6.5. So you don't want to cut on that line. It's a little too tight, but it's very close. So if you don't have one of these, you can use a regular ruler. What I would do to help me visually is take some tape or a sticky note. If you have sticky notes, I would look for the 6.5 inch, like this, and mark it. And then I would look for my 4.5 inch and mark it. Then you can see where you want to center your block. It makes it easier to look at. You also know that these lines are a little too tight, so if you go just outside the lines, that's going to probably be right on. What you can do at that point, you can make corner marks, flip it, and make marks on the other side, and make sure it looks good visually before you cut it. Let's go ahead and trim this using the orange pop ruler method. I've got my block. I've got my correctly sized orange pop ruler. These are made by Kimberbell. I'll go ahead and link them below. What makes these easy is all you do is line it up to where it looks centered. And what's really nice about this, that fabric tack down stitch line, that's right about where you want to put your ruler. That'll help you straighten it out. Make sure it looks good. When you use these rulers, you don't cut here, and you can't cut on this side unless you're a lefty. It's a little bizarre. On this kind of rotary cutter, the blade is here on the left hand side. I'm going to want to cut this side first. These rulers have notches. Go ahead and open your rotary cutter and be careful. Don't cut your fingers. If you need to add a little weight over here, you can do that as well. Your blade is going to go right in this notch, just like that. You go ahead and cut straight to the top. Watch your hands. And go right up into that top notch. I'm going to go ahead and turn. Keep holding it down as I go. And don't do this when you're ready to cut. Just make sure your hands are out of the way. Don't cut your fingers. Set it in the notch. And go slow. Don't cut really fast. Remember, you're cutting through fabric and the batting and your stabilizer. Turn. I'm going to hold this down. Looks like I may have actually cut a little bit crooked. It's okay. It's going to go in a quilt and it'll all work out. I need to be a little more, I can see here I need to be a little more accurate on my corners. So let me be a little more careful. Make sure it's pushed flush right against there. Move my finger. That's better. I'll show you what I did, but it will work when I put it in the quilt. No worries. It's been a long time since I cut with these. I probably should have practiced first. Hold it down. Make sure you're tucking all the way against that groove. There we go. So these were the first two corners that I cut, and these were the second two. I'm going to recommend practicing first. You can probably see that. It's a little wonky right here and right here. These were the first two that I did. These were the second two. These are nice and straight. So when you're cutting with this, there's room for your blade to wiggle a little bit, and I was too far over this way, it needs to be flush this way. Now, if this is uncomfortable for you to hold that close to where you're cutting, this is the small size. These do stack and they fit together. So I could have put this second one, which is larger, on the outside, and that gives me more room for my big giant hands. If you watch my videos before, you know I've mentioned I've got pretty big hands. There's a total of 3 rulers that nest, so you could even make it bigger and really give yourself a good solid surface to hold down and to keep your hand clear of the ruler. I know this block is a little bit crooked, particularly on these corners. Since this is the first block I did, by the time I get to the end of the quilt along, I may not remember, although honestly you can see it. What I like to do if I'm making a quilt and I cut something too short, something's wonky, I'll take a pin. I can tell this side is short. I'm just going to put a pin in here to remind me. So when I go to put this in my quilt, I can make the adjustment. Now let me show you on a ruler really quick. I'm going to pull that pin out. It's crooked, but it's very small. You usually have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's off by, I don't know, not even a 1/16, just the tiniest little bit. But when I go to assemble my quilt, I want to go ahead and make sure I'm keeping an eye on that, because usually I use the foot with a guide. So if I just run the guide right along this, it's going to be crooked. I'm going to want to make sure that I put it together straight. This side is also a little short. So I'm going to put my pin there and actually just pin it through the batting, which is kind of nice. And then these 2 corners came out really nice. My block is trimmed. I've got my bag. Back in the bag. Let's trim the next ones and let's do a better job. The next block I'm going to trim is the America the Beautiful 6.5 by 8.5. Let's grab that block and grab that ruler. Here's my 6.5 by 8.5. This is the middle rectangle. So this time I'll use the middle and the outside rectangle and show you how to do that so you have more room for cutting. And again, it's going to line up right along that stitch line. That's very handy. Okay, that looks good, but I can tell I'm a little too far up on my cutting mat. I'm going to slide this down. This is nice and centered. Let's take the next ruler and put that down. Now I have a little bit more area to hold with my hands. Let's cut this one. I'm double checking. I want to make sure that everything is straight. And remember to push your blade flush that way. So I'm going to put my blade in the slot, but push it flush. Let's go ahead and cut this block. Let's see how we did on this one. Much better. All my corners look really nice and square. This one came out really nice. So if you've never used these rulers before, instead of starting right off with your first block like I did, put some fabric down and practice. Make sure you're comfortable with your hand placement. This one came out great. I'm going to put this in the bag and I'll go ahead and cut the rest of the blocks. I believe that the heart blocks are going to be square, so we'll use the square rulers as well. The Land That I Love block is the same size as the America the Beautiful, so 6.5 by 8.5. I'm going to do the same thing I just did. For both of the heart blocks, we want to use the 4.5 inch square. That's the smallest one. Same process. We'll put down our 4.5. Nice. The lines fit really well on this one, and what's extra nice is I used a lighter color thread and it's a dark fabric. It's really easy to see. Go ahead and center that, and we'll put the next one down, and just because I can, we'll put the next one down. Now I have a lot of room for my hands. Make sure you're not at this side of the notch, you're on the far left side of that. Make sure you're in there nice, and then trim these just like you trim the other ones. all my blocks are trimmed, I go ahead and put them back in the bags to keep them nice and neat. I'm going to line them up in order. Got my little sticky note with the date and my clip. I'm going to keep them all together. We just finished our blocks for April 28th. Next up, May 5th, we're going to work on the Let Freedom Ring, Star Trio, Blue Petals, and Vase. Watch for a video week of May 5th. I'm going to try to get these out as close to the date on the schedule, which are Mondays, as possible. Thank you for joining me so much for the Star Spangled Beauty Quilt Along. Let's keep it going. We can get this done in plenty of time for the 4th of July. I'll see you next time.